It's often been said that people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And the more I reflect on that, the more I see how true it is. I'm Father James Lyons, and I'd like to tell you the incredible story of a woman who came into my life for a reason, and despite enormous challenges and setbacks, has clung on to hope and triumphed against all odds. She's shown me the true meaning of perseverance and of faith. This is the story of Linda Swayn.
The greatest gift I have received is life. God has given me the greatest gift of life.
This is quite a significant spot here.
Yes, it is.
So we've just walked through what would have been the entrance to the old hospital.
Yes, it was. And many a times I was here. This was our special chapel that was built in 1990.
Linda, how did your life begin?
My mother had an unexpected pregnancy with a Maori man who already had a daughter that was about 4 years old. And it was a shock to her. She didn't want her parents to know she was pregnant. So she got hold of a drug called methotrexate. And methotrexate is a drug that's used to be able to abort the fetus. However, I survived having received that drug in my system, in the fetus, and I was in Rotorua Hospital for 1.5 years.
Linda Swayn is a true miracle and an extraordinary example of someone who survived despite the best efforts to literally kill her. Linda is an abortion survivor. Her unmarried mother attempted to terminate her pregnancy in the 1960s, but the abortion failed, and Linda was born prematurely in Rotorua Hospital with several medical problems. After 18 months of hospitalisation, it soon became obvious that none of her family was ever to return to collect her or even check in on her. About this time, the Sisters of Compassion accepted Linda into their home of compassion in Island Bay.
I was admitted here because it was a hospital and I needed further medical care as well as surgical.
Your health has been a big issue throughout your life. Just tell us some of the difficulties that you've faced.
One of the main issues with the surviving of an abortion under the methotrexate drug is that it affected the skull. So I've got 2 holes in the back of my skull, and it's like a fontanelle that never closed. And one thing where it affects me is my body temperature. So every so often I've got to either take my hat off or put it on. And the other is it affected my feet. So I've only got 2 toes on each foot, which is one big toe and one other. So I've had surgery on my feet to help me walk properly when I was about 6 years old. And I've had surgery on my skull. So that's helped me, as well as surgery on my eyes, and that has helped me.
When were you told about your birth? You've described it well here, that you are a survivor of an abortion. When did you learn that?
When I was about 10 years old, Sister Jude was looking after the boys in Ward 4, and Sister Loyola was looking after the girls in Ward 2. I was in her care. Her and Sister Loyola felt that I should know. Then Sister Loyola and Sister Jude explained what had happened and why I was admitted to the Home of Compassion.
Linda has great memories of the sisters at the Home of Compassion. And one of the many that Linda holds dear is Sister Loyola.
I'm grateful for Sister Loyola and the care that she gave me in making my first Holy Communion dress and for being baptised on her birthday. I'm grateful for Sister Sheila for giving me the understanding and sending me off to Maori Club to respect and accept the Maori culture, where I learnt weaving to make Maori pois and cross-stitch tapestry. So I feel I've had a fulfilled life.
Early on, Loyola referred Linda to an educational psychologist at the home. She was found to have below average IQ. Her hearing was also found to be compromised and her vision impaired. But fitted with hearing aid and glasses, things changed dramatically. And Linda says life picked up.
My life was full of joy and happiness. My medical needs were met, my surgical needs were met, my social school needs were met because there were so many children. You weren't isolated. I had the best education. There was lots of land to play on. We had lots of things to do.
Sheila often talked to Linda about Suzanne Aubert, which is why Linda is passionate about Suzanne Aubert at the Home of Compassion. She says that she knew Suzanne would understand her, just as Suzanne herself understood her own little brother, who had quite severe disabilities. You were so different in yourself with your medical issues. So how could you be so joyful?
Well, being brought up in the Home of Compassion, there were other people who had disabilities and things wrong with them that were much older than me, that we used to visit upstairs. They were worse off than me.
You've mentioned already about a great education you had. How did that come about?
I didn't start school till I was 6 years old here on site at the Home of Compassion, and I was taught by Sister Josephine Galton, along with the local parishioners that attended on site here. So, and then from there, I then went to St Madeleine Sophie's down the road, and then after that, I went to Erskine College.
Were you accepted at all of those schools?
I was accepted at Pius X, and because the children got used to me at the age of 6 from Pius X, and that flowed on to the next 5 or so years at St Madeleine Sophie's, it wasn't until I started at Erskine College, which is a completely new lot of people, that I wasn't quite accepted, that I was bullied by about 3 other students. But that didn't stop me carrying on at school.
Was the bullying particularly difficult, and did it go on for a long time?
The bullying was more not just verbal but physical. And it didn't go on for a long time because it was dealt with.
Do people still challenge you?
Yes, they do. An example is I was at a bus stop in Wintle Street and somebody was being smart. So you don't have to be a male to bully and be smart. It's female too, and you don't have to be a kid either. It's adults too. And this particular adult was being smart, and I was trying to look away and not reply back to her smart comment about the way I looked. Because I didn't reply back and I looked away, she got a backpack and started bashing me across the face with it, and then booting me in the backside and punching me in the face. There were 2 other guys at the bus stop who stood in front of me to stop her, hitting me, etc. However, I then had to have surgery as a result of being punched in the face and my top tooth removed as the bone had an infection.
And she disappeared?
And she disappeared.
Apart from the bullying, you seem to have been accepted pretty well. Did you feel different yourself, though?
Yes, I do feel different, and I know I am different, it's obvious, but I push past that. I know every day when I go out of my house that it will be a challenge. And if I've had a good day, I praise God for it.
How have you stood up for yourself? What's behind that?
In standing up for myself, sometimes I think I don't want this to happen to somebody else. So sometimes I'll stand up for myself so I know that that person can understand, or if it's a certain behaviour that they're going to try and cheat me, that I know that they won't try, I hope that they wouldn't try it again on somebody else. So in that sense, that's how I've stood up for myself. And also while in the care of the sisters, we had older girls and boys, and they were like my mentors where they looked after me, and I saw how they stood up for themselves.
Linda says she was taught to show all people respect and always hoped that people outside the home of compassion would likewise respect her and accept her for who she was. You've told me how you see yourself. How do you think others see you?
Others see me as a person with a sense of humour, and a person that's articulate, and a person that is caring. We're taking a wee stroll up to the grotto. It's about where Our Lady appeared to a young woman called Bernadette in France. It means a lot because not just Catholics come here to pray.
So it's a sacred space for the wider community. And that's why it would have appealed to Suzanne. She would have approved of this grotto.
Very much so. When I was little and needed time out from all the other children, I used to come up here for quiet time and reflection and pick one of the flowers from the garden and put it in St. Bernadette's hand. And I called that my flower of hope. I've always had hope, and I've held on to that hope. And I'm grateful that I've been able to live a fulfilled life and that the sisters could see the potential for me. With the children in the ward that I grew up with, some of them needed that little assistance with spelling their name and the alphabet and the numbers, etc. And so I used to help them in that way. And also with Sister Sheila, who was a teacher, Sister Margaret Mary was a teacher, Sister Margaret Ann and Sister Bernadette Mary were a teacher. And I felt that I could have that skill as well to do the same.
She showed tremendous determination. School certificate, university entrance, and then on to a teacher's certificate. Part of that teaching took you into caring for the disabled, or a particular interest in the disabled. You began something that became quite a national association.
When I was at Teachers Training College, I was there at the time in the mid-80s, towards the end of the 1980s, and it was a time of mainstreaming where it was community integration for people with physical and intellectual disabilities, and many of the IHC homes, preschools and primary schools were being closed and institutions being closed. And some teachers were quite fearful, and parents, of that change. And here I was, someone from experience at Teachers Training College, and we saw that there was a need to educate the parents, educate the teachers, and be there for them. So we set up, along with a lecturer from Teachers Training College, Maurice Cochrane, Don Brown, Luana Maya, the New Zealand Special Education Association, to help take away that fear of mainstreaming, putting children into the norm.
Linda, one of your heroes was Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Why is Mother Teresa a hero to you?
Because she cared for the dying, the sick and the unwanted, babies, children and adults.
Mother Teresa, now Saint Teresa of Calcutta, came to New Zealand in 1973. She stayed at the Home of Compassion. Linda was just 11 years old, but meeting Mother Teresa was a life-changing moment.
After having met Mother Teresa, I wanted to go over and see Mother Teresa and be a volunteer worker. I saved up and took a trip through Europe and spent 3 months with Mother Teresa in Calcutta. And I took over the photos that were taken of her 13 years earlier when she was here in New Zealand and gave them to her. And she was very touched by that. And I certainly was with her in the streets, picking up babies, picking up elderly people as well, who were begging, and babies in dirt piles and rubbish bins. And she was really working amongst the poorest of the poor.
Hearing Linda talk about that experience with Mother Teresa and her real desire, strong desire to be part of that, to work with Mother Teresa, I find that quite amazing. Here's someone with so much going against her, you might say, but wanting to still give, to give of herself, to think of others. Amazing. How did the meeting with Mother Teresa change you?
It changed me in the sense that never to complain what you haven't got. Accept what you have got and never complain what you can't do and accept what you can.
Well, another adventure that you had was World Youth Day. Could you tell us about that?
In 1997, in July, August, the World Youth Day was to be in Paris. So I decided to take the opportunity and approached Bishop Max Mario from Hamilton and Bishop Pat Dunn, and then joined them on the World Youth Day to Paris in the hope that we would go to Lyon, to the roots where Suzanne Aubert came from, and that's what I did. And while I was in Lyon, I felt the connectivity of that generation of Suzanne Aubert and able to touch flowers and trees and the eating of the food and really sensing the culture.
You've kept up your association with the Home of Compassion and the sisters. Suzanne Aubert, their foundress, how is she special to you?
When I was young and we had our chapel, there used to be a picture on the right-hand side towards the altar of the curé of Ars. And I remember as a young child asking Sister who that fella was. And she explained he was Suzanne Aubert's best mate. And so I then understood that he had a very strong influence on Suzanne Aubert's calling to New Zealand and wanting to meet the needs of the unwanted babies, and as well as to work amongst the Maori people and meet their needs, and to accept everybody as they are, including the mother and the child, and seeing Christ in everybody, not judging them.
With our mother Suzanne, we gather to pray her hopes and her dreams.
So here we are at the tomb, if you like, the resting place of Suzanne Mary Hoepa. What does Suzanne really mean to you?
Suzanne Aubert means a lot to me in the sense that she saw Christ in everybody, in the mother and in the child, and was very non-judgmental. She accepted everybody, their culture, their race, whatever background they came from, she accepted that person.
What would she have thought of your mother?
She would have had compassion for her. She would have accepted her in a non-judgmental way, loving her as equally as loving me. She would have just accepted the circumstances to what had happened.
Did you ever resent or feel angry or that you were abandoned?
I don't feel angry and I don't feel resentful. I feel I have forgiven my mother and just accepted. I don't feel I could ever judge her. No. Just accept what's happened. When I was in the children's ward, I was looked after by Sister Sheila, and she was doing Maori studies and very much deep heart for the Maori people from the river, and would talk to me a lot about the people from the river and Suzanne Aubert's connections with the river.
Now the river we're talking about is the Whanganui River.
Yes.
Okay, and the location is Jerusalem on the river.
Yes.
So your experience of being there with the Maori people?
My experience with being there was I was accepted straight away there. I didn't stay with the sisters who were all up there at that time. I stayed with one of the families, and that was very special to me, which reflected back to Suzanne Aubert's time when the unwanted babies were just accepted into the Maori culture and families. It reflected back to, for me, that was the cradle of our institute, and that was where the partnership of the Maori people and Suzanne Aubert began. And yet here I was as a grown adult with a Maori family and just accepted.
Looking back, would you like your life to have been different?
Realistically, yes, but it would have been a little bit tricky for me to have been with my birth family, being a broken family, and I may not have reached my full potential and had such a full life if I was. So reflecting back, it reinforces my gratitude to Suzanne Aubert and to the Maori people of the river for allowing Suzanne Aubert to accept unwanted babies, mainly the Pakeha, because where would I be today if they hadn't worked in partnership with her?
Linda has coped with her physical and health disabilities all her life, and despite this she is grateful for the legacy of caring for the vulnerable that Suzanne left her sisters, so that she, Linda, was not discarded at birth. She's aware of the gift of life she received in her early years through the Sisters of the Home of Compassion. She considers that home, her roots, and the sisters are her family. So what happens from here?
I take one day at a time, and I do voluntary work here and able to show people around the Home of Compassion and the story of Suzanne Aubert. I'm quite passionate about the Sisters of Compassion, about having been brought up by the Home of Compassion, about Suzanne Aubert, and about the people from the river. My heart will be always grateful to the people of the river for working in with Suzanne Aubert, and my heart would always be grateful to the Sisters of Compassion and Suzanne Aubert for giving me such a fulfilled life.
Suzanne Aubert continues to live in the life of many people today, and Linda Swayn is one of them. She shared many things in this story of how Suzanne has affected her, And we've seen Linda's perseverance and faith in action. But of all the things she shared, the phrase that I will remember most is when Linda told me the greatest gift God gave me was life. How wonderful that is.
The greatest gift I have received is life. God has given me the greatest gift of life. And through the spirit of Suzanne Aubert, I thank her and God. And she often prayed daily, and we children did also in our morning and evening prayers. Thanks be to God for all He has done and is doing for us. And I live that day to day, thanking God for all He has done and is doing for us.
Thanks be to God for all He has done and is doing for us. Thanks be to God for all He has done and is doing for us. Thanks be to God for all He has done and is doing for us. Thanks be to God, thanks be to God, thanks be to God. Hallelujah, te kai.